two. Oh my God, that took me back a few years. Can everyone hear me okay? I know we've had a few issues with mics, so hands up if everyone can hear me, no problem. Thank you very much. I think I went to an NUS piece the other week and they asked us all to stand on a chair as an icebreaker. I haven't done that for a while, so and it's great to have a front row, which doesn't normally happen at conferences. So the gentlemen and ladies that have assumed this position, thank you very much. Round of applause. Thank you. So, ladies, gents, thank you so much, everyone, for coming here today. As you can appreciate, there's been a lot of work that's gone into curating such an action-packed agenda, and this panel, no less, although we've had a bit of a battle with illness and a few other bits, we've got a great group of people who are going to talk us through some of the challenges, but based around something that's been produced by the NTIA. And Alistair Turnham, who is sat here, if you can just wave to everyone, has been one of the shining lights in terms of putting a report together alongside CGA Nielsen in terms of the benchmark position for the nighttime economy and the industries that the NTIA represent. So without further ado, I'm going to get on with this conversation and this chat of exactly what has been happening within our sector. But I'm going to go ahead and just ask everyone to introduce themselves and give a bit of perspective of what your role within the industry is, and then we'll get straight back into it. So, Luke, can I get you to just introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke Elford from John Gaunton Partners. I'm a licensing solicitor. My job in the nighttime economy falls in two stalls, really. One, get license. Two, keep license. So I'm there when you're just starting out, and I'm there when everything goes horribly wrong.
Thank you very much, Luke. And Luke, we've worked with, has been a huge supporter of the NTIA and the cause, and it's a great pleasure to finally get you on a panel, if I'm going to be quite honest. Now, Ali Turnham, what can I say? I mean, fantastic effort on the report that's coming out on Monday, and it will be available through our website for people to download. And the great news is we've just had BBC World say that they're going to cover the report from Monday. So really big sort of congrats in terms of the work that you've done. And I know Ashley has also been a big part of that. But if I can ask you to introduce yourself and really thank you for your hard work.
All right, thanks, Mike. Yes, I'm Alistair Turnham. I'm the founder of Make Associates, and we create nighttime economy strategies. I've been involved in the nighttime economy since back in the 90s. And for a long time, people weren't really interested in supporting the nighttime economy. It was always something that was seen as a problem for the police, for councils, for the media, negative perceptions everywhere. In particular, we always laugh, maybe Luke also knows this, the famous drunk girl on a bench picture that was used for about 15 years on every media outlet to represent the nighttime economy. And I got bored of that, that narrative, and so back in about 2010, I got some economists in to measure the value of the nighttime economy to UK PLC. And after that, we've sort of done studies all around the world on how much it's worth, what it contributes economically, because, well, we all know that the most important part of the nighttime economy is the joy, the fun, the social connection. Often policymakers, they like to have hard figures to look at and to be able to compare our industry to others. And historically, we had no figures on how important we were as an industry. So there you go. That's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Ali. And if I can hand over to one of our board members and one of the people that's a huge supporter and has been a huge part of establishing NTIA Wales as well, Mr. Ben Newby, who, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, guys. It's been a while since the emceeing days. I do apologise. Yeah, hi, my name's Ben. I work for a company called TEG. I'm COO now, which is like super posh. But I've been in the venues game for about 25 years. Started as a raver. Now I'm too old to rave. I need to sit down. Sit down raving is good though. And I really handle everything from venues through to licensing. Really, all the really serious stuff that I had no interest in when I started being a raver and things like that. However, you get the benefit of knowing that you're doing something that meant so much to me when I was younger, and then you're part of the ecosystem to allow people to have those wonderful experiences that I used to before I got too old.
And I used to be a raver as well, and for the good days. And I forgot myself. Funny enough, I was coming back there saying I've introduced everyone and forgot to introduce myself.
This is Mike Hill.
And my name is Mike Hill. I'm the chief executive for the NTIA. Yeah, I'm the one with the biggest mouth, while all the hard work by the team behind me is phenomenal. I'm the one that gets to express myself in different environments and media, etc. So by no means the hardest working person in the NTI, but definitely the one that's got the biggest mouth and probably more to say for himself. So I am going to ask one thing before we start. We've got Mike Greaves sat on the side. Can you keep an eye on the time? Because all four of us could talk the hind legs off a donkey. So I'm just got to be mindful of that. So look, as we said at the start of this, we have this fantastic report that Ali and Ashley from CGA and Nielsen have put together. They put something together for us last year, which was almost the first roll of the dice in terms of benchmarking the industry. It was a great piece that we carried forward. It allowed us the opportunity to carry through, in lobbying terms, the value of nighttime economy. That means in terms of understanding what nighttime culture economy looks like, in terms of economic value, and also nighttime economy as a standalone. So those industries that we represent. But it also added another level of understanding what the GVA contribution was, what the HM, acronyms are killing me, and everyone keeps saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? So HM Treasury, what we contribute as an industry. And this year, it's done no less. If anything, it's expanded that sort of proposition and given us another opportunity to talk about the ebb and flow and impacts of pandemic, cost inflation, etc. So for us, I mean, this report, which is due out on Monday properly, will be a real opportunity for everyone to see exactly how the industry is performing, where the challenges are, but also where the positives are as we move forward. And I think, you know, my board members, for one, always sit with me and say, it's great seeing you, it's great that we're getting the coverage, but can you talk about something positive? And I said, listen, if I can find them, I'll talk about them. And we are trying. We have got some great partnerships that are launching, things like WHO and etc. But the challenges at the grassroots moment, those independent businesses are huge. You know, 40% increase in costs, 15% down in terms of customers having less disposable income. We're being impacted heavily, and we've got more to come this year. The budget in March is going to be an absolutely important part of the survival of many businesses out there, predominantly independents, which make up 80% of our trade or our businesses, right? So they're vitally important. People rely on them. We're the biggest employer of under 30s in the country, and we're bigger than automotive, we're bigger than beauty, we're bigger than fashion. So just think about how important we are and how important it is that we are sat at that table, which we have a firm seat at the table in Wales, in Scotland, the likes of Mike Greaves, who represents NTIA Scotland today, and the many others that fight to make sure that we've got a place and a voice. So when you do get that opportunity and you're asked to consult or take an active part, step forward and you know, have your voice heard. It's really, really important. So listen, without further ado, I'm going to get on. I've asked Ali to give us a bit of a synopsis of the report that's going out on Monday. So he's going to give us a bit of an overview or a feel, and then we're going to get some perspectives from the panel of exactly how things are moving in real terms at ground level, both operationally, from a licensing perspective, and then strategically where we need to see things moving. So Ali, can I get you to give us an update, please? Yep,
I'll try not to bore you with too many figures. Mike was like, don't do a PowerPoint, don't do a PowerPoint. You know, he'll bore them all to death, but I'll still bore you. I'll try and have some light and shade in it, okay? So when we first did this report for Mike a couple of years ago, he wanted to understand what was the nighttime cultural economy. This was a new phrase to me, but basically Mike had made it up. And it was, we often talk about the value of the nighttime economy or the hospitality and leisure sector, but he was interested in, well, what's the value of particularly places like this? DJs, performers, artists, clubs, live music, theatre, cinema, performance spaces. You know, that bit where the nighttime cultural economy is that bit that is dependent on people coming out to see performers, see creatives. It's not just about drinking and eating, right? We do put it in the report. We do put it in bigger context of, you know, how big a portion the nighttime cultural economy is of the hospitality industry or the nighttime economy generally. But it's very much focused on this niche, this important niche that we all are passionate about, which Mike defined. And in it, we do stuff about consumer spend and jobs and what the value added is, as Mike said, i.e. that's an important measure because it's like how efficient and how productive are we as a sector, and we can kind of track its health by how much value we add to the inputs into individual businesses. So in 2021, me and Ash did, from CGA, this mythical Ash, he's in New Zealand, lucky boy. Although not as lucky as me, being here with you, right? And we did this first study, and it's a mixture of data that CGA produced, CJ Nielsen, which is not publicly available. We do some complex modelling around that, and then we use some statistics that the ONS puts out. There you go, that's the methodology in a nutshell. And I think if I sum up that first report, which was pre-pandemic, although it was published during the pandemic, the data is always out of date by about a year, government data anyway. It showed that after the last recession, the nighttime economy and the nighttime cultural economy were absolutely key drivers of recovery of the economy more generally. And that over those last 10 years, our sector outperformed the UK economy by about twice on virtually every indicator in terms of consumer spend, jobs created. It was massively successful and had its, you know, it was glory days for a long time, right? For example, in 2019, the nighttime economy was worth £116 billion to the UK economy, 2 million jobs, and the nighttime cultural economy, £37 billion, right? So, you know, we think about individual businesses or businesses with a few venues. Yes, part of our world is about small venues, often grassroots venues, independent venues, right? But collectively, you know, we are a really big force for economic good and for jobs as well as social cohesion in this country. So this second study looked at the pandemic impact, and overall, you won't be surprised to know that there's been a really serious, significant negative impact of the pandemic, right? If you're actually trading, particularly outside of London, some parts of London, then you know that from the front line, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know as an operator or someone working in the industry. Just to give you some context, the pandemic hit the UK economy for about 10% reduction in terms of gross domestic product. The nighttime economy was down 34%, and the nighttime cultural economy down 37%, right? Why was that? Well, of course, it was shuttered longer than other sectors, and the nighttime cultural economy, 15 months of closures. Heard Mike every day on the news banging on about that and trying to get it reopened within reason. And it's highly reliant on a mass audience, right? However, it's a nuanced picture, and there are a few positives that come out of this report. We didn't lose as many businesses as we predicted in that last report. Overall, less than 1% in our sector. So we have seen closures, but as part of the bigger picture, there's some real resilience in there. And that's, I think, because we're a sector that is all about creativity, risk-taking, confidence of operators in the future, belief and passion in what we do as people in this industry. Maybe it's too much passion at times, and maybe people mortgaging their homes to keep their business going, right? And the vast majority of those businesses are now significantly more stressed than they were 2 years ago, right, as we entered that pandemic, particularly given the cost of living crisis, which we haven't measured in this because it's not in the figures. That's the next report, right? So job numbers in our industry have recovered, and they're no more than 2% down. So as an industry, we're employing people again, which is great. And in fact, in the nighttime cultural economy, the jobs that were added in the last year were more than the nighttime economy or the hospitality and leisure sector, percentage-wise, than those two sectors. So, you know, we're seeing employment happening, and we're also seeing firm numbers are stable, right? So there's some good green shoots after the last pandemic. Oh, hopefully the only pandemic in our lifetime. But there's some big negatives, right? So, and absolutely key to every venue and every supplier and every part of our chain is how much consumers are spending. Overall consumer spending was down significantly in the nighttime economy, from that 116 billion that I just mentioned to 79 billion pounds. So that's, in 2020, we vaporized 40 billion pounds of income that we were previously reliant on. So the nighttime economy more generally has recovered in 2021. Last year we were about at the same level of income and profitability that we were in 2014. So we're 8 years behind now. We may have recovered a bit more in the last year. Hopefully we have, and that will come up in future statistics. The data also shows a continued decline in spending in 2021 in the nighttime cultural economy that is close to our hearts and Mike's heart. And that worries me because it means that while spending has recovered somewhat in the hospitality and leisure industry, it's still going down, or it was last year, in the nighttime cultural economy. And I think that we need to investigate that further. We've not done that in the case of this. But I'm worried, a hypothesis I have is that maybe we've lost some people from our industry as consumers forever, right? As I'm concerned about that. There's a lot of competition in different ways. You all know about it, whether it's from Netflix or from drinking at home and socializing. And if you look at, for example, cinema is one of the worst affected creative and cultural industries in this country. You know, it's hard to, you know, they're not even back at 80% of customers. And in fact, a quirk in the statistics, which we discovered this time, was the Office for National Statistics didn't even put in the amount of money earned in 2020 and 2021 by the cinema industry, because it was so low that it compromised the individual businesses' financial information, right? It could have threatened them. That's how bad cinema is. The rest of it, of our cultural economy at night, is better than that, but it's still not strong. I think one of the things that Mike mentioned at the start is this gross value added thing, right? It's a technical term, and it's hugely complex. But what I would take from it is that it's a measure of how much value you add to all of the inputs into your business if you're running a venue, right? And the problem with that is it's gone down a huge amount, and that then compromises businesses' ability to continue investing in the future, right? So if you're operating at base margin and you have very little cloth left to cut on this, you don't have the money to invest in the things that you want to do, such as marketing and promotion at the same level that you used to be able to do, or refits and refurbs, and obviously Ben can talk about that as well. So the things that are the proposition, the unique proposition that people are coming to, the infrastructure that surrounds it, that you as businesses want to actually invest in, is being compromised. And I think we're going to have a real struggle for the next few years, particularly with the cost of living crisis, to be able to invest in the businesses to attract back the audiences that those people are sort of slightly nervous, or we may have lost, or new audiences. So I'll conclude, as I have talked for a bit, which is that I think the study presents a difficult picture, particularly given the cost of living crisis on top of it, but there are some green shoots, and I think overall the thing that comes out of this study, Mike, is just how resilient the businesses have been over the last 2 years, and the passion to keep going, whereas I think some industries would have given up sooner, and we'd have seen more business closures and less jobs. So too much faith in your own business? No. Too much faith in the industry? No. But it's a difficult time.
Thanks, Ali. And a few observations from this. I know everyone out there, you know, you've confronted the last 3 or 4 years. It's been a real sort of hearts and minds sort of moment. There's a lot of people who run these businesses with their heart rather than mind, and they progress and persevere and push forward and pivot. Some for the better good, and some that have compromised people because they have such a passion for this industry. So, and it's really important to sort of understand that. And there's a few other things that I think are really important to highlight here. We have also seen a huge contraction in independent SMEs. ONS stats that came out suggested a 13% contraction in small, medium enterprise businesses and independents, where you're talking managed or conglomerate or corporate businesses, only a 3% contraction. So you can understand the vulnerabilities are within those independent businesses, within high streets and across the country. but please understand they are also vitally important in terms of the creative integrity of high streets. What you don't want to see is a huge amount of corporate businesses up a high street, because you lose that character, that reason to visit, that change, that evolving look and feel of those people who can pivot and change their product very quickly. And that goes for promoters as well, promoters that constantly reinvent themselves. You know, so I think it's really important that we protect those creatives, protect those independent businesses, whether you're a small 100 capacity bar that do something so unique and are known for something so unique that people queue out the door, but it's the reason that people come to cities and towns up and down the country. And what we've got to be very careful of is losing those and possibly, you know, some of the corporates, for good or bad, engulfing or grasping the opportunities at the financial vulnerabilities of some of those independents to get rid of some of those independents or lose them from the high street. So we need to protect them. And part of protecting them is supporting them, taking an active part in community and really working hard to sort of protect them as much as possible and trying to keep that balance. So look, without further ado, I know you've heard a lot of stats from Ali, and thank you. That's also a very difficult thing to deliver, but Ali's got some great points that he's brought up there. So I'm going to bring in Ben now, who's got a huge amount of experience and is, without a doubt, very direct in terms of what's going on and quite colourful. Yeah, and he's going to be the first one to swear on a live stream on YouTube as well, which I've tried to keep all cute and nice and everything. And by the way, BBC and Sky and no, I'm only joking. You know, we want colour. So listen, Ben, give us your take on it. It's really important to hear what's going on at that front line at the moment.
Yeah, front line, you know, I mean, and again, we don't want to be super negative all the time, but you know, it is challenging, you know, and it's the you know, essentially, you know, the art, the culture, all of that size that powers our ecosystem, powers that nighttime culture. You know, it has to exist in a world in which it is making profit, otherwise it cannot continue to happen. So when we're getting the margins squeezed so much, it becomes very, very tricky then, like you were saying, to add that investment in and take those next steps. I think it's obvious, you know, we've got the utility bill issue, that's a drain. You know, our venues, I mean, our highest increase is 517%. I think, I don't know if you saw the article from the chap from Brewdog, it was like, if we increase the price of a pint to the same amount that we're getting charged on electricity, the pint would be 25 quid versus 7 quid. So it's a difficult time to exist and to operate, but at the same time, I think going through the pandemic, I've seen improvements in things like communication with government, communication with authorities. Not that it's got any, I suppose, easier in the sense that the things are still happening, but there's better lines of communication. I think through this, obviously, we all benefited from that July 21st opening, do you know what I mean? It was, July 21 opening, where, you know, the trade was amazing. Do you know what I mean? It was busy, people wanted to go out, they wanted to spend money, they wanted to get into those things that they'd been missing. I think what we've got is obviously, are there any people that turned 18 in the pandemic here? Well, yeah, I'm like, right, good. So I think what's weird is, you know, you go through that journey when you're like in your teens where it's like you hear something on the radio, then you meet somebody that's also into that sort of music, then you go to your first like independent venue, and then all of a sudden you come out of like, you know, your school environment, your uni environment, and then rather than being dumped in with a group of people that you might not have anything in common with, you walk into a venue and you have, you know, let's be fair, life-changing experience. It was for me. You know, there I was in like, I don't know, going to a school in Cheddar, and then I went to my first club was like Paul at Manor, and it was like Tony DeVee was playing. It's like, yeah, fucking all these people, yes, they all like what I like. There's 3 years of people that hasn't happened to, do you know what I mean? Where they've had all their information through, as we all did at that time, you know, social media, TikTok, well, all those different other platforms. And that's the concern I think I've got, is that almost, don't want to call them the lost generation, do you know what I mean? But they didn't have those influences and that exposure. Most importantly, the sweat, the in there, close to people, feeling that energy in the room. don't get me wrong, it was great. I mean, when I was like, I don't know, Bob Sinclair was doing like a live DJ set on like, I don't know, YouTube or something. Me and my wife were like, oh my God, yeah, when this starts again, we're going to go back out. Oh my God, this is amazing. Remember we used to go raving all the time? After like the second bottle of wine, because the wine delivery was the best thing of the week. But and they're the ones that I think is where we've got a bit of exposure there. Like, what are they going to do? I've seen a change in the student market, and I was chatting to a is that you there? No, right. James over there from Nottingham University, and we're seeing the same sort of thing, where you almost got like 2 years of freshers, and then there wasn't that kind of second year influence where it was like, yeah, you want to go to this slightly more dodgy area of the city, but you want to go to this really amazing venue. So I think that's an interesting little risk. But interestingly, with my friend who's a promoter, Pete Jordan, he's started to do like 16 plus nights, and he's seeing a real invigoration of like the youth that are now getting into the electronic, going out to these live experiences. And it was interesting, I think Hayley, who was on the promoters panel, she was saying about how obviously, and this is true, you know, venues, so, you know, we make our money through selling alcohol generally, do you know what I mean? We work with promoters, so then there's the higher fee conversation, but generally that cash flow, that comes from drink sales. When we've got one an age demographic that is drinking less, you know, for us, you know, obviously what we've done is we've increased our, you know, non-alcoholic offerings, normalising the idea of going for a drink after work but having a non-alcoholic beer. And those sort of things, I think, are important that, as ever, I think this is a time where we need to evolve and evolve quickly. And as usual, find out what the young people want. Like, I don't know, I'm 45. Like, fuck, I'll sit in my pants and play video games. You know, look after my cats, go down my allotment. But I don't want those kind of 16, 17-year-olds coming through all these 18, 19, 21-year-olds that exist right now, not to have those magical experiences where you look at it and go, God, you know what? Life can be amazing. You know, and that's the way we're seeing it. So, you know, like I said, the margins are a challenge. I think there's more, like you were saying, more competitive from other, other forms of entertainment. And the most important thing is, because let's be fair, we still had TV, we had films when we were younger, do you know what I mean? So there were games, consoles, so we had those other distractions, but it was that visceral experience where it touched you in your soul, you know, and held your heart. That's the bit that they've missed. Like I said, the sweat dripping off the ceiling, do you know what I mean? Getting that, that's what made it so incredible, you know? So, you know, we've seen some good stuff, like once we get them in the venue, people spend well, so that's a positive. You know, I think a key to any operator right now, we're lucky, we're in a state, so we've got like 5 venues, which obviously collectively can have a bit more impact, but it's things like, you know, sponsorship deals, retros, rebates, those ancillary payments that you can create with the venues that I think when you're an independent operator, you don't necessarily get exposed to that as much. And then the other thing I'd say is collaboration. My personal feeling about it all is everybody needs to play together a little bit nicer, because when we were all in the pandemic, it's going to change. We're all going to start working together. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not going to call out anything or anything like that because that'd be a bit controversial, but I think it needs to stem from venues working better with promoters, you know, agents and artists working better with the promoters, police, licensing authorities. You know, every time we do a license variation, it's like 7-8 grand. Do you know what I'm saying? That's there off your margin. You know, easier for us because we're in a state and, you know, we're owned now by a bigger corporate company. That's an expensive thing, you know. And also, residents, you know, just for once, you know, maybe we're not the big fucking problem that you think we are. We're not the reason that a van got stolen. We're not the reason there's 1 million NOS cartridges on the floor, you know? So, yeah, but I think more communication, more collaboration, and an understanding that if we all work together, we can get through the next year, year and a half. Because honestly, it's going to get better. It always does.
Well, he didn't swear all the way through that, apart from the beginning. So, no. Listen, Ben, you're absolutely right. And I do agree with you. Listen, the biggest thing we took away from the pandemic was that community element. Trust me, I had 20 WhatsApp groups with constant messages and people telling me, how do you answer at 3 o'clock in the morning? And I said, well, you know, sometimes some people just need you. And it's stressful. So I completely agree with where you're coming. The consumer has changed. As well as there's been a talent pipeline, there has also been an experiential pipeline gap in terms of 850,000 new 18-year-olds. The interesting part is Michael Rodriguez is a counterpart of mine in Australia. He'd say when we were just coming to the part where we were just about to open up, and he turned around and he said, you know, you're not getting this. He said, you've got to remember, we have spent the last year and a half making sure people can do everything that we do at home. Receive alcohol, receive food, have home entertainment, stream, etc. We've now got a reverse ill. And the interesting part is that's exactly what's happened. And cost inflation has come at a great time. Customer behaviour has changed without a doubt. There is a different requirement. But the big thing that we need to consider is while we had that community aspect during the pandemic, and as we move into cost inflation in the next crisis, what we need to do is continue that continuity in terms of community feel. And that's everyone understanding they've got an equal part to play and measure in ensuring everyone's survival. Energy firms have clearly shown their state, but, you know, artist management, you know, landlords, all these sort of people also need to play an active role. And I think it's important that we keep those streams open. But listen, we're going to go on a different ilk now. And Luke is here. He's been a long-standing supporter of ours. But I'm really keen to hear from a licensing and situation exactly where the challenges have been at the front line. What have been the issues that we've been confronted with that have put some barriers in place in terms of trade?
So both yourself and Ben have talked about the sense of community during COVID times, and I personally have found that COVID made people less tolerant when it comes to venues, less tolerant when it comes to noise, less tolerant when it comes to disturbance, and I'm also seeing that borne out in the enforcement. There is dialogue going on between the enforcing authorities and the venues, but far too often, instead of the four-stepped approach of engage, explain, encourage, enforce, we're just seeing people drop the first three and go straight to number 4. There's lots of movement around noise abatement notices, venues getting hit with those, lots of reviews, even summary reviews starting to creep back in again. So the enforcement machine is waking back up, you know, if you think a variation of a license is expensive, try defending a summary review. It's a hugely difficult, challenging time for venues and for operators. And the other thing that's been a real problem, I think, is we have policies and things out there that make it very difficult for those people, those creators with new ideas, to get into the areas that they want to get into. We have cumulative impact policies that say, no thank you, Mr. Operator, with a fantastic idea. You can't come in here because we already have too many venues and you're just going to tip everything over into anarchy. I, in my day job, spend a lot of time trying to get those applications granted, and it's very, very rare that my client has then tipped the balance and has turned the West End into an absolute nightmare for everyone. But still, we get the same old thing over and over again. We have councils where officers are instructed to object to applications in certain areas, whether on paper or not. It all makes for a very, very difficult piece in the licensing world, when really, in my view, we should be doing everything that we can to help businesses as we come out of COVID. And I know that there's some work being done around deregulation. I'd like to see a lot more of that.
I think the one thing that, and it always makes me laugh, I love Philip Colvin to bits, and he's going to be here over the next couple of days, but he said very clearly, we can't run society on whether we can police it or not. And it's such an apt statement, because if you think about it, our limitations are sometimes in the infrastructure that we present within society. And one of the big challenges that we have at the moment is the approach, the attitude, and the accountability element. The approach and attitude, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the local authorities and policing in terms of not only revisiting what licensing is, but also, let's be fair about it. And I gave this analysis to a minister a couple of weeks back, and I said, listen, you can't be an FIA director unless you understand Formula One racing. So why have we got police officers that do not understand our industry and how it works? There has to be an element of education coming into licensing that takes account of not only the cultural understanding, but also a business understanding. We spent more time during the pandemic explaining what escrow was, or the difference between nightclubs in terms of a cultural venue and a social venue, which is very commercial, and where it's sat in terms of government departments, than we did anything else. So there is a huge amount of work to be done in terms of education. But just a touch point, accountability for me in terms of personal accountability and business accountability. Can you give us a bit of a view on that? I know we've spoke about it before with regard to drugs and that side of things, but I'm really keen to just get your feeling on where that sort of sits at the moment and some of the frustrations.
I'm really worried about the direction of travel that we're going in with regards to venue responsibility for things that I would say are actually personal responsibility. If I, in the middle of a nightclub, for whatever reason, decide that I want to hit someone, as long as the venue takes the appropriate action following on from that, it isn't really the venue's fault that I chose to do that to someone. Equally, if I want to take a boatload of drugs and pass out in a venue, again, we're putting so much back onto venues, and there's a really worrying thing here with the direction of travel that we're going in terms of that. There's something happening up in Scotland, I think, which is not my area of expertise, as you can tell from my very London accent, but talking about ensuring that people get home at the end of a night. I mean, how far are we going to take this? It really feels to me that it's not going to be long before we see someone go out, have a load of drinks, go home, hurt their partner, and then somehow it's the venue's fault for giving them those drinks in the first place. We are really heading in the wrong direction with how much we are attaching to venues.
Ali, I know you sort of, I mean, you've got a very broad view. You do a lot of work with Sylvia from 6 till 6, but there are some positive initiatives that are out there, and some positives that are things that are happening that are coming from the industry and some local authorities. But accountability-wise is quite an interesting one, and quite rightly you bring up Scotland. I think it's Unite that are driving towards that all licensed premises pay for each of their members of staff to get home safely. Which, as you can imagine, everyone's had a massive panic. It then sort of came south of the border, and my phone blew up, as you can imagine. So, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to, alongside NOS and all the other bits that are going on? But Ali, what's your view from what you see at the moment in terms of the way the local authorities are working and what you're seeing working alongside them and the initiatives that are sort of present at the moment?
I would say it's extremely patchy, and it's driven by individuals and maybe elected councillors who are responsible for town centre regeneration or the licensing committee. It's almost impossible to predict, if you don't know these authorities individually and the people who are involved in the process, how they will react to certain things. So there's ones I could roll off the top of my tongue here who are really good. They're trying to be proactive and support business. They were great through the pandemic on table licensing and outdoor seating, and really trying to mediate where there are issues between residents and venues. Then there are those that take a computer says no approach to everything. And so for me, I find it very patchy. And one of the things that you're doing, we're trying to do, and others, is get authorities to learn from each other, places to learn from each other about what works in terms of pragmatic solutions to things, how you apply for a license, how we make it easier for businesses, things like this. And there's a project that we're doing with the GLA and Amy at the moment, which is about trying to get local authorities to just make sure that when you apply for a license, because often people apply for a license and they employ Luke, but Luke's very expensive.
Reassuringly.
And 90% of people who apply for a license are not employing a solicitor, or you might have an exact figure, but it's a large number of people. So often they get knocked back because they don't know what they're doing, but they may be young, creative, have a really great business idea, but they just don't have the money to employ a solicitor or a barrister. So what we're trying to do is find ways that we can ease that process through. there's issues around training of counsellors. One of the biggest problems is, you know, I'm old now, but I'm not anything like as old as all those counsellors that I tend to present to, right? They're in their 60s, 70s and 80s. Now, that's not to say that they don't have a valid view about many things, but I hardly ever see counsellors in their 20s or 30s or 40s who are making decisions about nightlife in this country. They're absolutely rare. I mean, unbelievably rare. And one of the things I'd like to see, and maybe this is something we can think about working with a local government association, would be how do we get more young people onto those licensing committees so they reflect the demographic that's actually using our venues in the evening and at night. Talked about it for a long time, but I don't have time to do it at the moment, but it's something I'd like to do.
You're going to start me off on a rant now.
No.
Listen, myself, and sorry about this, I've got to get it out of my system. Right, so I completely agree. There was a big piece a while back that was saying the average age of a counsellor was about 62. And we're asking them to make decisions on nighttime economy businesses for people 20 years plus their junior. There is a campaign that is coming up, something called Stand Up, which is about us grasping the next 5 to 10 year cycle of political will and the direction of travel in terms of politics, which I think we all know is going in certain directions, particularly with the way things are at the moment. And, you know, to be very clear, my political position is this: who's going to do the best for our industry? I don't care what colour tie you wear. I just want to know what you're going to do for us that's going to make us a better environment for us to trade. So we do need to attack that. We do need to get some younger people in council positions and officers, because it is a rarity, without a doubt. So there's two things we need to do. We need to educate to the immediate point, which is now, to make sure that people who are in office know, and then we need to move towards the 5 to 10 year cycle to encourage people within our industry who have a passion for our industry to step up and take an active part in politics and represent, to ensure that our long-term security in terms of the way these businesses operate within the high street is safeguarded by people who are fully informed. It's as simple as that. Rant over. Thank you very much. YouTube. See you later. Ben, give me your position on licensing. You are quite pragmatic, I know, and you've got good relationships.
Yes.
Tell us where your frustrations are.
Patchy's the word. It's the inconsistency. City to city, licensing officer, we just want a clear and level playing field, because it goes in different extremes. Because there are licenses awarded to people that shouldn't have them. Fact. Yeah? And if we say that's not true, we're undermining all the great operators that take this job really seriously. Then on the side of it, there are operators that have to jump through hoops to do something that they can do, that they invest the money in, health and safety, risk assessments, all those things that I think, obviously the party goer doesn't necessarily understand it, but they feel it. You feel a safe venue. I think I'm right with that. You know, you feel that. So when it comes to licensing, like you said, Mike, my approach has always been, I attack it head on. Before I put in a license, I pre-engage. I speak to every single member of authority that I think is going to be a problem. I then find out what their problems are. I then build a case, and I've got 2 examples where I've won licensing variations where each of those councillors said to me, we cannot not give you this. Which obviously is really bad because they didn't want to give it to us, you know. Then, months and months, sometimes years of great trading, no major incidents, well-run venues, engagement with community, engagement with councillors, put in a variation. Oh, no, you can't have that. So again, right, okay, let's engage. For me, it's a game. I'm going to win, and I'm going to beat them, because what we do is important. What we do has much more of a cultural impact than what locals, almost swore again there, Mike, sorry, what a local councillor does. And I think sometimes what's interesting is local councillors, they also forget they're our councillors as well. Yeah, and what we're feeding in, like we've had one particular, which I won, on Friday, a 2-year planning permission issue, literally to allow me to use 20 late licenses, that I already got through my premises license. Yeah, so I won it in 2018 on the premises license. 2 years later, no problems, no instance of that. It got identified that the planning permission didn't. Fine, retrospective planning application. The local councillor, residents, they took that as a second almost attempt to get rid of our 20 late licenses. 20 late licenses equate to a potential of 400 grand in net revenue. Our venues are like multi-use spaces, so we do our live music, corporate, and then the club as well. For Tramshed in Cardiff, that's the difference of it making money or, well, making a bit of money or losing a lot of money. And yet the councillor, and this is the worst thing, is I don't know if a lot of people have done the planning stuff, yeah? Licensing's fun because you're in the room and you're in the hearing and you can go back and forth and you can argue your point in the moment it's happening. With planning, you watch it on YouTube and you've got a planning officer who represents you. And very frankly, I think I said earlier, that local council got up and basically, even though we'd ran 18 events on a trial period, we had 1 complaint with environmental health and we had no complaints from the police. The councillor stood up and said, there is other complaints that you guys are not aware about that are coming through us. And I'm there on YouTube, swearing, and just being like, how are you allowed to do this? How is our venue at risk because somebody who is not in the demographic that goes to the venue? And luckily, we were saved because 2 of the people on that council went to Tramshed, had an amazing time, and could honestly communicate how well the venue was run. But it still got very, very close on the vote of like, I mean, the first vote we did to get a trial period of 12 months to do a trial of something we'd already been doing was 4-4, and then we won it on the last one. The trial didn't happen because of the pandemic. Next one was 8-2, and this one was 6-2. So we did, you know, we got the win, but venues are always in a delicate position. Everything is always our fault. Do you know what I mean? We are held accountable for things that, you know, somebody gets, you know, I don't want to use a really bad example, hold on. Somebody, I don't know, has a fight in a Tesco's. They don't shut down Tesco's, yeah? But it's those 2 people fighting, do you know what I mean? So licensing is a challenge, which is what I will say, you can win. And when you win, the victory is sweet because you know they are out to get you. And as far as I'm concerned, I will keep doing it, jump through these hoops, just so, and I think one of the promoters said it, so sometimes I can go into that room and look out and go, yeah, this is amazing.
And just to say, Ben is running for councillor very shortly because he's just been voted in. You can see the passion, can't you? Listen, for the first time I have ever agreed with Tim from Wetherspoons is the fact that he turned around and said there's a tax disparity. He'd also turned around and said, that, and we've said there is a disparity to the way that we're approached as an industry. You know, late night economy and general hospitality or supermarkets or hotels are treated very differently. You know, if someone decides to take drugs, go into a hotel room and sadly pass away, they don't close the hotel, they don't close the supermarket. You know, the reason the NTIA here is because when Fabric had that very same issue, the police closed it down. And a group of business people turned around and went, no chance, not going to have it. And 100,000 people went, no, you need to come back to the table and you need to deal with this because things like this are not going to go away. They're going to happen in society. You know, we are a better place, a safer place for people to come and enjoy culture and engage and be an active part of the nighttime economy than them going and finding a warehouse or doing it at a house or whatever. So it's really simple. So look, I know I'm getting close to time, but I'm going to ask for a couple of things, a last couple of statements from everybody if possible. And Luke, I'm going to start with you. What do you want to see change? 1 or 2 sentences, what do you want to see change over the next 12 months that's going to make a difference to this sector?
I'd like to see a bit more deregulation, or the things that had been deregulated brought into permanence. I'd like to see a collaborative approach to enforcement, and I'd like to see the sector give space to breathe and to bring itself out from under where it has been, because it's been a horrible couple of years.
Thanks. Ali, you're going to have some... give us an idea of what you want to see moving forward.
Well, I know at the moment if you run a venue or you're a supplier to a venue, we're all worried about sustainability and what we're going to make next week, next month, etc., right? I suppose because try and think for cities and towns on a longer term scale, and hopefully if you run those venues, we'll all still be here, right? How do we condition an environment 5 years hence that is more supportive of what we have now, right? And that's what I'm interested in doing for towns and cities around the country, around the world. So for me, I know, Mike, you focus very much on cost of utilities and all the things that are killing businesses right now. I'm interested in that dialogue and cultural change, right? Because in 5 years' time, we don't know what the world is going to look like, but can in 5 years we have changed the kind of way that councils, the police, the media, crucially the media, actually view our industry and see it as an actual saviour of our towns and city centres rather than a problem to be policed. And we are getting there. It's starting to change. You've done some great work. There's various other places like the GLA and Amy are starting to go, well, you know, let's not see all London boroughs as restrictive. You know, we need to start thinking about the opportunities, nighttime enterprise zones, starting to say that this is important. And I feel in 5 years we can make a significant change. We've come some way, but we've got a long way to go.
Thanks, Ali. And the important part, I think that the really important part is we have suffered a long time with a very strong risk narrative around our industry. And that's going to take some changing. That's going to take some education. That's going to take cultural changes at the point of decision making. But it's all moving in the right direction. And we do talk about, we talk about the press. We talk about it in a way that we are a very challenged industry at the moment. You know, industrial action, whatever side of the fence you sit on, the challenge that we always have is, you know, if there's no consumer mobility, that makes it very, very difficult for our industry to survive. So, Ben, can I just get you to give us your final comments? You can sort of drop the barriers now and be yourself.
No, what do you mean, be myself? Yeah, this annoying dude isn't who I really am. I'm actually really pleasant. No, easy. First one's off the bat. VAT. Let's get a bit of VAT relief in there. And rather than just doing on food, let's do on beverage as well. That'd be really handy. Obviously, business rates. That's, you know, 50% reduction there, I think is fair. Like I said before, man, collaboration, I think, you know, and obviously, you know, NTIA does incredible work. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years is, I'd say, probably the most serious our industry has been taken. And that, to me, is where this is going to start. Because to be able to be now in a building where we've got operators, authority members, promoters, artists, agent, you know, every part of the ecosystem is here now. And it, like I said, it's collaboration that will get us through the next couple of years. We'll come out stronger, and then we'll ride that wave of success. But to sound super cheesy, we do need to do it together.
Easy. So listen, I just want to say thank you for everyone to staying with us. We've got some amazing panels after this. We have, just for your information, an additional panel with Label Works later on after the DJ Monitor panel. And people attending, there is a networking mixer with Label Works afterwards, which most of you have signed up, can register and come along to it. There's about 200 or 300 spaces. So it's going to be a great little event with a bit of a drink and a bit of a giggle and well, I ain't dancing, but I'll definitely be there, so just to be very clear. So if you want to come along to that, please let us know. Thank you to the amazing panellists. Thank you for your input. And thank you, everyone here, for sticking with us, as I say. Enjoy the rest. We've got a few more coming after this, but it'd be great to keep you on the journey. So thank you, and thank you very much.